I'm Justin Boyd,
I'm Amber Churchwell.
and we are the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. We are here today to discuss the second half of the Netflix series, The Haunting of Hill House. We're talking about episodes 6 through 10. So, Amber, we did it. You've done it many times. You've seen the show. I don't know if they've come up with numbers to calculate how many times you've seen the show, but I made it through my first time. I actually went back and watched a couple of the episodes multiple times. So, we made it to the finish line on one of your favorite projects. How are you feeling?
Yay. Very excited. I I I do love Hill House so much, and now I hearing how that you enjoyed it
Yeah.
brings me such elation. I can't even begin to describe it. I'm so excited to talk about these last couple episodes, because I feel like there's a lot to dive into, a lot that's intriguing, and like I mentioned in the last episode that we covered when we were covering episodes 1 through 5, I hope you liked episode 6 because I think the production of that was really cool.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we have lots to discuss. I'm excited.
Yeah. So before we do have a lot to discuss. Before we go like episode by
Mhm.
episode, I want to say, like, you said we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to think about. After I watched it, I had a lot to digest. And I think it's because it turns out that the house was digesting people, the Crain family, um, in particular. So I did not see that coming. I knew it was a haunted house because it's called the Haunting of Hill House, but I didn't expect it to be the house was feeding off the members of the family. That's a new take,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we don't literally see the house like physically like chomp down and bite them and eat them, but
Nope.
in a way, there were it describes it like the red room, which becomes very important in the final 5 episodes, becomes known as the stomach of the house. And um, yeah, so what would you think about that? How unique is that to other kind of supernatural horror kind of shows?
Um, I to pardon the pun, I guess I ate it up. I was so excited about this, partially because, and I mentioned this in the last pod that Mike Flanagan is a fan of Stephen King, and I think the I'm gonna quote them again. That podcast that's covering Mike Flanagan's work, and they do a lot of Stephen King work too. They're doing Flanagan's Wake over at Media. They use the words that Stephen King wrote The Shining and Rose Red as sort of a love letter to Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House because there's a lot of similarities there or echoes. And I think that in turn, when Mike Flanagan was creating Haunting of Hill House, that it's a little bit of a love letter to both Haunting of Hill House and Stephen King. Because
Mm.
the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, that does something very, very similar to what Hill House does to me, at least when I'm digesting it, is that it goes into because that's what the Overlook Hotel did. The ghosts and the hotel itself were corrupting and driving mad Jack Torrance. And later on in Doctor Sleep, which was also directed, the film was directed by Mike Flanagan as well. The similarities get really clear because along with the Overlook and Hill House both waking up when the families return to those locations, the lights turning on inside, that visual, and how I'm going to go back to it. I think the Crane family shines, and I think just like how in the Doctor Sleep, the Overlook Hotel is described as a place, an evil place that eats people who shine. I think that is also describing Hill House. Hill House is a
Okay.
place that eats people who shine because the house itself, a lot of tragedy did happen in Hill House before the Crane's family arrived, but a lot of it was just natural causes or accidents. The
Mm.
actual hauntings of it happened to the Crane family, and like we mentioned in the last episode, I think that they do have some kind of shine ability to them.
Mhm.
So I think it's really, really interesting. I thought it was a great concept. And also, the Red Room is in general just an ode to Red Rum from The Shining. So
Gotcha.
there's like a lot of connections there about a family isolated in one location, tragedy before
Mm.
them. There's a lot of similarities there. And I thought it was just so fascinating. And now going back watching the show as many times as I have, I can go back and see I know every single instance that they've been in the Red Room. And you don't know it until the very end.
Right.
And all of the little pieces, once they finally click together, it's amazing, it's tragic. After Liv's episode, Screaming Babies, I cry at that one too, but I'm also a crybaby, guys, if you haven't noticed. Um,
You've never cried on this podcast, by the way. You've been on with us
yet.
many times. Yet. Not that I'm trying to make you cry or that I want you to cry,
Nah.
but,
I
if you have that
have,
reputation. Yeah.
I think I've kind of desensitized myself about it. If we were to really talk about character analysis and go really deep into Liv or Nell, I'll
Yeah.
probably cry. But because there have been times where I was talking about Nellie one singular time about the bent neck lady aspect of her, and I was like crying to my mother over the phone on a random Tuesday, like just because of how sad Nellie is. Like it was
Yeah.
just it's wild how often I cried at the show. But um I loved it. I'm just so excited. And like I like I pitched it to you, I really hope that episodes 1 through 5 and then episodes 6 through 10 were a perfect way to break it up.
Yeah. Yeah, they were like
Yeah.
2 halves. Like, you
Mhm.
need to put them together to have a sandwich or whatever, but, like, it was, like, perfectly, like, even, I thought, and,
Good.
yeah. No, it's very well done by you to schedule and program for the watchers in the basement. I definitely appreciate that. Um,
Thank you.
the one thing I do wanna mention before we kinda get into the episodes individually is, you were
Mhm.
talking about The Shining and comparisons to this and, to The
Yeah.
Haunting of Hill House. I mean, I've seen The Shining, but I'm not super familiar with it as far as, like, the lore and everything, but it seems like in The Haunting of Hill House, the difference is the house was just born bad, which they even say that in one of the episodes. It was born bad or built bad or whatever. Is that is that kind of what you got from it? Like, is that kinda different from, from other
The original
episodes?
what's kind of interesting is in when Steven is describing Hill House, he says that that like bricks met neatly, things were perfectly aligned, things like
Yeah.
that in Hill House. When the book of Hill House, the house is not built like that. The house is built a little haphazardly.
Mhm.
Um, One thing that's kind of interesting is, and I did mention it last episode a little bit, that the in the book, that because it's how confusing the house is, because it's confusing. Like things don't appear correct. Like something about the house and how it's built is unsettling and uncomfortable for you. And I think the 1999 movie that I just watched a couple weeks ago, I think the amazing and fantastic, but it definitely gave off that energy. It made a lot of sense. But they mentioned in the book that because it was so confusing, the layout, that for Theo and Nell to get through to find the dining room and such, Dr. Montague and Luke actually left the doorways open and closed the doorways that were not the way to go, kind of as a way to
Yeah.
get through the maze.
Right.
But the house kept opening the doors and closing the doors on their own.
Yeah.
And specifically it kept closing doors.
Mhm.
So Nell and Theo would be like, I thought they said that they left the path open, the doors open, and there's no doors open here. So where do we go?
Yeah.
And the house kept closing them. While in the show, we see, especially in the first episode, a couple of times Hugh kept trying to close the door to the twins' room and things like that, but it kept opening itself. So yeah, the house is built haphazardly. Uh, it's also a little bit because Shirley Jackson, who wrote the book, is actually from Northern California. So I don't know if it's confirmed by her before her passing, but it's very reminiscent of the Winchester Mansion. In it's about 2 hours away from me, hour and a half. It's a massive mansion where they just continued building, and there's stairs to nowhere, doors to nowhere, um, windows that make no sense.
Mhm.
Um, there's like a third floor door that leads to open air. Um, it's a wonderful, fantastic place. I am actually going there in 2 weeks to visit with friends, and I've been there for my birthday before. I love the Winchester mystery. It's very, very fascinating, and there's a lot of history and lore there. But that house is built weird. It is just a weird, unsettling house because of how it
Mhm.
was constructed and why it was constructed that way. But Hill House is very much the same way. Like it's built to be unsettling. It's built to be weird. And we talked a little bit off screen before the pod that read a lot of the history of the Hill family that they were going to incorporate into the show, but they had to cut due to time.
Mhm.
And Jacob Hill built the house, and that's fine. But later on in life, William Hill, the bowler hat man or the tall man, he was the one who went to the asylum for a few years, most of his life. He decided to randomly do additions to the house that made no sense, and he uh, there's kind of references that he may have had schizophrenia. I don't know how relevant that is to it, but they, when Liv and Hugh are talking about the floor plans of the house, it says that she says like it's like the house is schizophrenic. It doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
These floor plans don't make sense, and that is very in line with the book and with the history and story and the origins of the house. So I don't know if bad is the right word. If we're going in the
Yeah.
Shining Overlook Hotel aspect, then yeah, it's it's bad. It's evil, just like the Overlook
Yeah.
Hotel is. But it's also just built weird. It's a funky dude. But I think it's very very interesting how we talk about Hill House. So character, like, because it does seem to be a semi sentient being on its own.
Yeah. Very much so.
Because the ghosts aren't the ones opening the doors. The ghost isn't the one digesting people and driving people crazy. It's the house. So it's complicated and
Yeah.
weird, but I think it's interesting.
And apparently the power of the house extends outside of the home because let's go to let's go to episode 6, which is titled Two Storms. And it's basically the episode is a family reunion, a Crain family reunion at as they prepare for the funeral for Nellie. And we see, the kids, see their dad for the first time in a long time on what turns out to be a dark and stormy night. Um, it's in the Boston area, correct?
Yeah, they're in
Yeah,
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, yeah. Um,
Same as Hill
so
House.
yeah, so let's get into episode 6. What are some of your highlights? What are some of your major takeaways from the 6th episode?
Episode 6 was part of my pitch to you for this show.
Yeah,
Because I just know that you're very interested in like the production and how things are made with shows and movies, and
yeah,
the fact that this is like 57 or so minutes and it's done in 5 continuous takes. Um, Episode 6 is fascinating from a film view. There's on YouTube, there's a couple of different like featurettes that you could watch where they talk about just episode 6 and how they filmed it, because episode 6 is what they pitched to Netflix to get approval for this show. And they built the set of the Jackson family um, funeral home and Hill House. They built those sets connected to each other for this episode. They built a like a takeaway elevator for the camera for this episode. They flooded the set for this episode
Oh, wow.
accidentally. Um, this it's very very interesting, and even this a lot of the scenes with the flashlights and the phone flashlights, a lot of that is the actors using their own personal phones for that, and they are the ones in charge of the lighting. So these actors not only had to nail their marks, nail their lines, do everything, their actual acting and performances, but they all had to be perfect, and they were also doing their own lighting. And this episode is a masterpiece on its own.
Yeah.
And that scene where Hugh is looking at the kids and then it spins around him and then he sees them again as adults, as children and then as adults, like
Mm.
that, the actors had to run away and hide behind that wall, and the kids had to run out and get in those exact same positions and then all run back inside, and the adults had to return all in that same exact position. It's a very very interesting couple seconds.
Yeah.
um and also it was very very difficult, I know, for them, based off of the featurette that I watched,
Mhm.
that the storm part of Inside Hill House, because Olivia basically teleports. So they're getting like stunt doubles for they tried not to as much as possible, but they did have to do some stunt doubles of Olivia, uh, like Carla Gugino's character, to get her from one end to the other, and because she's it's still in one take, so it's not like they can just end the cut and then move the character over here. No, that's cleverly done behind the
Mhm.
scenes. They're just all over the place because she's actually moving through these places and teleporting, like booking it to get to these spots. And episode 6 is so cool. And it's kind of hard for me now that I know how much detail went into the making of episode 6. It's kind of hard for me to actually pay attention to what's happening in episode 6 because I'm so focused on
Yeah.
the technicality of it all.
Yeah.
But it's so cool. And
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it
sorry, go
definitely
ahead.
is. Yeah, those continuous shots, those oneer shots, or you can tell, like, obviously there's some editing here and there, but yeah, it's very well done. It's also you're going two different timelines, like we talked about in the previous episode, where you're having a storm that's taking place back in '92 at the house, to now you're having one in present day. It's happening at the funeral home, and a lot of big stuff happens in this episode. You have obviously Hugh gets to is reunited with the kids. You have the kids, you get some infighting with the kids because, Steven is there. Steven wrote the book Hill House, The Haunting of Hill House, and there's the blood money aspect. And Shirley finds out that not only did Theo, her sister, who's living with her, take the money from Steven, the royalty money, but her husband Kevin did too. And so you have that double whammy. Then you couple it with a little later on, Shirley finds Kevin and Theo in like a storage closet together, and they're kind of like in an embrace, which we find out more about that later on. But yeah, it's a tough episode for Shirley if you're a Shirley fan.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Um all of it was so rough because you I do sympathize with Shirley because she does represent anger and in the stages of grief, and she thought everybody was just as mad as she was about the book and was just as offended as she was. And the fact that her husband went behind her back, the fact that her sister went behind her back, it it hurt her. And it kind of breaks my heart a little bit seeing how hurt she is, and when she
Yeah,
has to softly say to her husband, like, do you understand how much you've just embarrassed me? Like, because she's over here saying about how it's blood money. I don't agree with it. But and kind of it does come off as very holier than thou.
Mm.
And I don't think she means it that way, but that's kind of how it comes off. Like, hey, I'm better than you because I'm not profiting off of this horrible thing that happened to us. And her for her husband and her sister to do that was it hurts. And all of them are dealing with the loss of it. And throughout the episode, Steve is still seeing he sees Olivia and he sees Nellie. Like he is still reeling and shaky about seeing a ghost for the first time.
Mhm.
And he also still doesn't believe in actual ghosts. He thinks that his family has mental illness situations going on. So he's like, okay, I finally I'm cracking like the rest of my family. So that's a conflict in and of itself. It's devastating for Hugh to see his children that he's estranged from, and there's nothing that he can say because of how his kids are. They're not like Steve and Shirley are never going to believe in the ghosts of Hill House. So he can't say like the house is haunted. They're never gonna like it's and that's what happened to your mom and that's what happened to Nellie because they don't believe it. So there's a lot of like resentment and hurt in this episode that does get addressed. And we find out why, but later on in the following episode, but Theo is also going through something and trying to cope with it the best way she can. And Luke is struggling seeing his twin. It's it's a very very sad episode and it is a little I feel terrible for laughing every single time, but Shirley I think says something about how like she was always trying to get us all together in one room, and Theo saying like someone should have told her she didn't have to try this hard.
Mhm.
Like I kind
Yeah.
of feel when you pair that with the end of this episode and how in the Hill House timeline, little Nell during the storm just randomly disappears and they go hunting for her because she just
Right.
vanishes. Where like the ending is just so sad because all Nellie ever wanted her entire life was her family together and her family happy. And not fighting or yelling anymore. That's all she ever wanted. And so for her to be seen and for her to be recognized and for her to have acceptance. And she represents acceptance, like the fact that that's what she's wanted her entire life. And that we find out that's what she thought she got when she returned to Hill House and Hill House was showing her family members saying, "Oh, we always believed you. You were right about everything. We love you. We believe you. We trust you."
Mhm.
And it was just Hill House telling her what she wanted to hear. And it's just so sad that because we do see the bent neck lady, we see which we now know is Nell. We do
Right.
see her throughout this episode, and she's there with them the whole time, but they don't because she's gone, they don't see her. They don't acknowledge that, and they're still fighting. And that causes her to do the only thing she can do, which is the blackout or the such. It's I guess like not vying for attention, but vying for them to shut up and make up.
Mhm.
But it's very, very emotional. I cry at Nell's that neck lady reveal. I cry at the end of this episode. Um, with young Nell's over voice over the last scene.
Mhm.
And I cry during Screaming Mimi. So those are the three spots I cry at. But yeah.
So a lot of tears in the final half of the season of The Haunting of Hill House from
And a lot more
Amber.
ghosts.
Yeah, exactly.
You pointed
Um,
that out.
yeah, you can actually see them. You can see them. They're more
Hmm.
visible there in the first 5 episodes for sure. The 7th episode titled Eulogy this episode, the Cranes are there to say their final goodbyes to Nellie, and then we also learn that I mean, we've kind of known this. But we learn that Hugh talks to Olivia, his dead wife. He's been talking to her. He talks to her all the time. He talks to her like when he's talking to the kids, and the kids notice like, "Hey, what's going on? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing there?" And then we also find out that we see flashbacks that involve the Dudleys, Mr. Dudley's
Mhm.
connection to the house, and there's a secret in the walls. So take it from there. What were some of your key moments from episode 7?
Um, I when I was watching this with my one of my best friends, Kaylee, she asked me very early on if the Dudleys know about how messed up Hill House is, why don't they tell Hugh and Liv? And I knew that this monologue that Mr. Dudley has, fantastic monologue, um, in this episode was going to happen, and she hadn't reached it yet. So I had to kind of think that if they told them too much too soon, they wouldn't be believed, and they would just be brushed off as crazy, and then every single thing that they said after that would not be believed or trusted. And then but if so they had to kind of wait until they knew this family, and this family kind of were also experiencing things for them to actually, get to needle their way into being trusted.
Yeah.
And I it could have maybe they could have maybe done it a few days earlier, but I think it's kind of exact his Mr. Dudley talking about his mom and her troubles with Hill House, and then his own wife's troubles with Hill House, and why they only stay there during the day, and they leave every night.
Mhm.
Um, I think we needed to hear all of that, and Hugh needed to hear all of that to kind of see why his and how that applies to his wife, and to see how that's applying with Liv. And because that's what the house does, and it's specifically active at night. It's a very nocturnal home. And it's a beautiful monologue, Mr. Dudley's monologue. I was just watching it today. But beautifully told. I just think it's very, very interesting. And we actually, the body that they find in the walls is uh, William Hill. It's the bowler hat man, tall man.
Mhm.
Um, that's his body. And which is because we did hear earlier in, actually, I do not recall which episode it was, but it might have actually been earlier on in this episode itself when the cops are talking about to Hugh and saying, like, that's the talking about Liv's death and saying how this isn't even talking about the other body. And Hugh says, we had nothing to do with that. Um, you get this, they're talking about William Hill's body.
Right.
Um, because they found that random body there. But I think it's very, very interesting, and there is a theory that I kinda touched on and I with you before filming, and I wanna touch on here because 'cause we're talking about Mr. Dudley. There's a theory too that he is an illegitimate child of either William Hill or Hazel Hill's son, Edward Hill. Edward Hill is the burning ghost in the cellar who was chasing after Luke. Cellar, and so there's the theory that because while his mom was working as a maid in the house, that he's an illegitimate child of the Hills. So that was a thought that I thought was kind of interesting because him and his family and his wife and children are also affected by the house. So
Mhm.
I think that would be really, really interesting, and especially what we learn about his daughter later on. But we'll talk about that later. And yeah, I think it's very, very interesting. But eulogy is a great episode for the monologues, and we also get Liv talking about how giving her monologue about her childhood and how she lost her father when she was young and she cried so hard she made the sky rain rocks. That is directly from the Haunting of Hill House book. Um, and Stephen King actually used that in Rose Red and in Carrie. So uh, it's that Nell's character, Eleanor Vance, she made it rain rocks in her when she was a child. So it's kind of, and I thought it was neat how they wove that in there.
Mhm.
And when my friend Kaylee and she had read the book before watching the show with me, we were both able to point to that and be like, some of that is direct quotes from the book, and that's really interesting how they wove it in there. And I just think it's so interesting, especially in these episodes as we're viewing more and more Liv slipping, and until we get to Screaming Mimi's. Like, I think it's all very interesting.
Mhm. And speaking of Liv, we see her ghost attack some of the family members, attacks Luke, Hugh, and Theo, and it really is. There's parts of this where I'm just like, before I saw the finale, I was just like, just a little communication between the family. It seems like you kind of figure this out, but we learned that Hill House is a lot of things, but one of the things, it's a house of secrets, and there's the one big secret that you basically don't tell anyone about Hill House if you want to see your loved ones again in whatever form or fashion that they're still existing in this house. So, yeah, I mean, I think the finale really does a good job of kind of pulling it together. But to me, along the way, I'm just like, why don't they talk about this? Like, I mean, there's a part where they, like you mentioned, where they talk to the cops, and the cops are even kind of jokingly, but they're like, "This place is kind of haunted or whatever." Then they find the body of William Hill, his where he bricked himself inside, and you see his skeleton, still like laying bricks, and you're just, or he was trying to claw his way out also, and it's like, that's kind of weird. Wouldn't that kind of like, set off a bell in your head? You're like, maybe that's not a normal thing, that someone bricked themselves in their own home and died that way. Doesn't that sound like a, you know, strange
Well, he
story?
was raised in an asylum, so I don't think William Hill's the person to look at, if we're honest.
Right. Okay.
um,
Fair.
Hazel, she's sane, and she lived in that house for most of her life. So I think she'd be the most. Hazel's the older woman that we see.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, they could have talked more, but I think it kind of goes back to what I said about the Dudleys. There's certain things, especially with family. You know these people most, if not your entire life. You know how they're going to react to things. And some people are not going to believe in ghosts no matter what you tell them. And we see that in Steve especially, but surely
Yeah.
a little bit. And there was only so much that Hugh could say. And he also didn't want the house being, if he's like stuck to the house is haunted and things like that. It's like the lawyer said in the first episode, open the house up, people want to see the house. And he says no, because he wants it locked up, because he doesn't want anybody having access except the Dudleys. And we know why by the end of the series, but uh, he doesn't want anyone else being eaten by this house. So if he's haunted, paranormal activity people are going to go wanting to see the house. People who are interested in crime are going to want to see the house. People who are just
Yeah.
interested in tragedy and sad stories want to see the house. People who are interested in architecture and history want to see the house. He had to, the only thing he could say that wouldn't draw attention from somebody was to say nothing, at least for Hugh.
Yeah.
And Luke started seeing, he saw his mom
Mhm.
at the grave, but and Steve tried to tell him, like, no, you didn't. Like, I've seen things, but it's not real. There's something wrong with us. So it, everything had to be revealed when it did because nobody they wouldn't believe it otherwise. And I feel like that's very true to how most humans are. Like I but I've never experienced anything personally.
Yeah.
And so since I've never experienced anything personally and I physically have been to a lot of haunted places and never experienced anything personally, I want to believe in ghosts, but I've never experienced it. So if I had a friend or family member say they've had this terrifying interaction with a ghost, I wouldn't it's not that I would disbelieve them, it's more of just I have to experience it for myself. You need to see it to believe it. And
Mhm.
I think that's where and I don't think that's excusing everybody's behavior, but I think that's definitely why a lot of them don't communicate as well as we hope they should.
Mhm. Yeah, and obviously, if they communicate, it's not as good of a show either. Like
Yeah.
it's a shorter show, so we don't want that. But as this episode ends, you see Luke is he's gone missing. We find out that Theo's car is also missing, and so is Shirley's wallet. And so um the next episode is the hunt for Luke. A big part of that is that episode. Let's talk about episode 8, Witness Marks. It's Halloween night, and like I said, Steve and Hugh are going looking for Luke, and Luke's determined to destroy the house that
Mhm.
took his mother and took his sister. I mean, he believes that, and he's actually not wrong. But
Yeah, Hugh told him he was right,
yeah,
so
yeah. But in this episode, you get a lot of time between Hugh and Steve, and you even hear or I should say Steven. He tells his dad about how, like, he thinks that all this stuff with the mental illness, he's taken it so to heart, and he doesn't want to continue. That he got a vasectomy before, or like, very soon in his marriage, so that he would
Mhm,
not pass on these
mhm.
crazy genes. And that's a pretty strong way to start the episode.
Yeah, and now we know why him and his wife Lee were estranged since the beginning of the series and why he wasn't
Right.
staying at home. It kind of brings a little bit of clarity and it makes sense for his character, but it's it's sad and you understand his fear, you understand his fear, his regret, and you see where he's coming from, but also imagine how devastating that was for Lee because he got this before their marriage and then he said to his father that I meant to bring it up but then I just never did and then we got serious and then we got married and then we were trying like it all happened one after the other and I never had a time to tell her. And that's also I don't wanna say every single thing is connected, but part of me is like, that's what you do with a lot of people who pass, is like, there's a lot of things like, I wish I told them I loved them more. I wish I told them how much they meant to me before they passed, and
Right.
before I had the chance. Like, it all life was happening, and
Yeah.
I let that slip through my fingers. And I like to take it that that's kind of what Steve's, I guess, dilemma was with, because that's how I interpret it, at least. But I it's so sad, and Hugh having this beautiful, like, analogy that Liv later on talks about in her episode in Screaming Meanies, um, about the kite and the line and how they always like, even though they always fought with love. I thought that was beautiful,
Mhm.
and because everybody fights, with loved ones, not even just in a marital sense, but
Right.
you everybody fights with friends, family, siblings, parents, children, like everybody does. And you're going to have disagreements in life, but fighting with love and still fighting with that unit as that unit, I thought was just beautiful. And it's just sad for Hugh as a father to know. And I think Liv even mentions to it because kind of regrets that he didn't get to show a good role model of what a good marriage was because Liv died. And Liv even said, like, we were solid. Like, we did what we could with what time we had. We were solid.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting and very, very, very sad because Steve now, even though he is officially seeing ghosts now, he still is like, okay, now I'm losing my mind and I'm going to go find my junkie brother. And he's so hurt that it comes off as attitude and snarkiness, but
Yeah.
he's just over it. He's lost. He doesn't know where to go, where he's going next, and he doesn't know what else he can do for what he's lost. And it's so interesting. But I do like the monologue, and I do like how we start seeing Hugh being let. Then we see after they find out where Luke is going, then Hugh is like, okay, now you're gonna listen, and he gives him the hard truths.
Yeah.
Like all of the examples of how he did see ghosts, how this isn't crazy. The house is after them. The house eats them. Luke is very much in danger by going back to the house. And just so like I was terrified for Luke the first time that I watched this because I was so worried it was gonna get him.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that he took 5 cans of gasoline for the 5 lanes,
Right.
um, because the other 2 were already gone. But yeah, we see the house and we're getting more development here, and we're also like learning a little bit more about Hugh and Liv and who they were before the house.
Mhm. Yeah, we also get a lot of Shirley and Theo too in this episode. We get them
Yeah.
at the funeral home, and then obviously some supernatural stuff's happening there, and then they are on the way to Hill House, even though I believe their father told them don't go, don't come here, but
Yeah.
they're on their way. Then we get a crazy jump scare while they're driving.
Best jump scare of all time.
You want to lay it out for us?
Yeah.
Like,
Um, I, with one exception, because I have one friend who's a scaredy cat. Love it. If you are listening, Kaylee, I love you, but you are a scaredy cat. Every single time I've watched this with another person, I will warn them about some jump scares, but this one I never do
yeah.
because you need this jump scare. It's the greatest jump scare ever. So Theo is in the passenger seat. Uh, Shirley is driving. They're going to Hill House, going against their father's wishes, but they're going to try and make up everything. And they haven't been able to fully explain what happened. Like Theo hasn't been able to fully apologize or fully explain yet. She did explain about what her and her dad saw in the office with the Broken Forever home and seeing the ghosts of Liv crawling at them, but we kind of get an explanation for what Theo's been going through the past couple episodes since her episode.
Mhm.
Um, where she starts trying to explain to Shirley, but her explanation is getting all jumbled, and Shirley is just like, you know what, forget it, never mind, forget I asked, like I don't want to hear it, and they start arguing again. And during their argument, um, Ghost Nellie just comes in, but from the back seat in between them, screaming. And what's interesting about filming that is Flanagan actually gave them 5 pages of dialogue, and he told Victoria Pedretti, he told her separately, he's like, you jump out whenever you want. And so they had plenty of more dialogue. They did not they had minutes worth of dialogue before they expected her to jump out. So their screams, and I might be incorrect, so please, I guess, leave a comment or let me know if I'm incorrect, but I think they also for her ghost, creepy version of her. So
Hey, could you
their
repeat that? 'Cause I think we
reaction,
lost. I'm sorry, we kind of lost you a little bit there when you're saying,
Oh,
yeah. Could you repeat
sorry.
what you just said? Yeah.
Of course, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, so correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, but I think the actresses hadn't seen Nellie's creepy decaying ghost makeup yet. So their screams and their screaming and their reactions are 100% genuine. That is the take that they use, is that one where she jumped up out of nowhere and complete like paragraphs before she was supposed to. And so those screams from Theo and Shirley were 100% genuine. That was their genuine reactions. And I think that's really, really interesting because it's a good jump scare. It's a jump scare for us and it's a jump scare for the actors. It was so cool.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, they're supposed to, it's, jump scare is supposed to be surprising, but this one is especially out of nowhere, and it really gets
yeah.
you. Yeah.
And I feel like because Mike Flanagan does jump scares differently from a lot of more modern horror directors that I've seen. Because I see a lot of the time, because I watch a lot of horror movies, guys. I watch a lot of scary movies, thrillers. I like it. It's a comfort for me. But I've gotten to the point where I can kind of pace when jump scares are going to happen. There's one modern movie that I actually flinched, and that's the most I've actually had a reaction to a jump scare in a long time since this jump scare,
Yeah.
because I didn't anticipate it. But every other time, I can just like, oh yeah, it's gonna happen around here. Okay, it's
Mhm.
gonna happen around there. Like my body can sense it because I've seen so many of these. You kind of understand
Right.
the rhythm of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Here, I did not anticipate it because you are so, and I feel like this applies to the background hidden ghost too. You are so interested in the dialogue, in the characters, in the performances, in the monologues that they're giving, that you don't notice the things that are behind them. You don't notice the things that are going on around them. And
Right.
I think this jump scare and those background ghosts are because of the same reason. You're so drawn into this fight between these sisters and wanting to know what's going on and wanting to understand, and you're right there with them, that you're not even thinking about the ghosts until Nell just comes in like, "Hey, stop fighting."
Yeah.
Um, and then Theo has, Flanagan had to give his wife an amazing monologue as usual. Um, Theo having this amazing monologue about what she experienced when touching Nell, if you want to get into explaining that.
Actually, I think you probably have a better handle than I do. So, go for it.
Well, it's just Nell, Theo has as we've talked before, I'm going to use the term. Um, she feels and knows things by touch and skin to skin contact. And she took off her gloves and touched Nellie's body. And from that, she was overcome with the numbness and sadness and
Mm.
of, of death. And she describes it as floating in an abyss of darkness, and how numb and sad and painful, and she wonders if that's what Nellie felt and that's what her mom feels. And it's very, very sad, especially like when you consider that Nellie is acceptance of death. So, this also brings up a theological like belief system in Theo. Like she's like, oh, is this what death feels like? Is this what it is, what the afterlife is like for us? Like, is it just this? And we find out that that's why she was drinking so much at the night of the storm, because she was trying anything and everything to cope with that feeling of death and that feeling of numbness. And it's kind of getting into, because she's bargaining, and after bargaining comes depression, which is Luke's personification. And Luke represented depression by using drugs to cope with his
Yeah.
overwhelming grief and loss and sadness. So the fact that Theo starts kind of going into alcohol that way that Luke does is kind of showing that she's a transitioning step towards that. And it's sad. And so we find out that during she actually ended up being in the storage room trying to find lights with her brother-in-law, Shirley's husband, when the lights go out and she's already feeling numb, she's already drunk, and she's just lost in this darkness, can't feel anything, can't see anything. And he was there. He was a human connection. And she does have this feeling through touch. She's wearing her gloves like she usually does. So she does kiss him, but that initiates touch, that initiates feeling, and she's able to it brings everything back for her. And after this sobbing on the ground explanation and this beautiful monologue and performance that Theo gives, Shirley just takes her hand and helps her stand up, and they go back into the car to head to Hill House. But it's not an excuse for what they did, because I mean, but the husband was instantly like, no, 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 we're not doing that. Like
Yeah.
he very much turned her down, and it wasn't about lust or love or anything for Theo. It wasn't about that. It was about human connection. And it's so interesting, but um all the pressure is mounting as they head towards Hill House to until we get to Screaminis.
Yeah. And we are there now. Episode 9, Screaming Mimes. We have we see Olivia in the flashbacks. We see her dealing with what's real and what's not. She's really having a battle with reality, and she's very concerned with her children's safety, which this becomes a very important plot for the last couple episodes of the show. And yeah, so that's pretty much the main thrust of the storyline. And also you have the Luke and Nell of it also being thrown in there. Let's talk about episode 9.
Okay. I'm a little scared and sad, but you go first because I've been talking a lot. So I want to hear your thoughts and opinions and things of it.
No, I thought it was a really good job of showing because you see her kids, and you see them as children and you see them as adults, and you see that she's trying to protect them, but her way of protecting them is actually feeding into what the house wants, because the house wants them, because it's already claimed her, even if it hasn't yet. Technically, maybe it has, and so she's trying to protect them. She's trying to keep them in the house, and she sees the visions that she sees. She sees Luke. Did she see Luke with a needle in his arm, or is that episode 10?
She sees it in both.
Okay, so yeah, that's a big part of the episode where we see she's trying to deal with how can she save these kids, and she what she doesn't understand is that by saving them for her, it's killing them for the rest of the world,
Yeah.
which I thought was a pretty unique circumstance.
Mhm. It's honestly very much like Inception. um where like you think that the wife thought she was dreaming so much so that even in the waking world, because you like one way to wake up from a dream is to die. And so even in the waking world, she thought she was still dreaming, so she killed herself. And
Mhm.
that is kind of echoed here. We see how the house is deteriorating her mind, and we see how Poppy was involved with that. Um, Poppy Hill was married to William Hill, the bowler hat man, tall man, and they like what Mrs. Dudley, Mrs. Dudley says is that they met in a insane asylum. She was crazy. She was like legitimately not sane,
Yeah.
and she her kids died from unfortunate accidents and losses, but she did lose her children, and I'm sure that did nothing to help with her sanity. And she is whispering and eating at Liv's insecurities, Liv's doubts, her things that are upsetting and traumatizing to her. She's kind of poking at them and prodding them. She's giving her negative ideas. Um, and the manipulation, we slowly see it start to work. And it's so sad. Even when it gets to the end of the episode and we see um, Hazel trying to be like, she lies, Poppy lies. That one always lies. Because Poppy and Hazel don't like each other.
Right.
That's always been a theme, even when they were alive. It's just, it's devastating because we hear how Poppy lost her children and then they woke up from these nightmares, but the nightmares that she's describing are their deaths. And they woke up and everything's fine because that's how Hill House works. When you die in Hill House, you're stuck in Hill House. And her not sane mind saw her children suffering and going through this horrible thing, and then they died and they woke up in Hill House as ghosts, and now they're there forever and they're stuck as they are, and now they don't have any pain, they don't have any fear or doubt. And so I can understand why Poppy and her deranged mind would come up with this, but sadly she starts, we get to where Olivia is not quite there anymore. She's just constantly seeing her children pass. Like, part of me wonders, like when I was rewatching it, part of me wonders because she describes her that what Hugh calls a dream, where she saw Nellie's body on a table in Shirley's funeral home, and she saw Luke on the ground with the needle in his arm, and she describes that to Hugh and saying that even though they were adults, it took her a while to realize that was with the twins. Part of me wonders is if years later, when Luke started getting into drugs, if part of that like happened in his brain where he was like, Liv was right, because that is something terrifying for a mother. Like, I can't even imagine how terrifying that was. And just seeing her sitting on the ground in the red room, or her reading room, crying, um, and shaking, just thinking about what she just saw. It's terrifying, and you kind of understand why she wasn't all there and why what happened. It's so sad.
Yeah, we also get
Yeah.
the storyline of um that they want her to leave the house for a while, take a break, go visit her sister Janet. And this is part of the show that I thought was kind of confusing because she doesn't actually go, but they thought that she did. It's like,
Yeah, they sent
how
her
would
off in the
yeah, how would they
they sent
not
her off in the taxi.
yeah.
They sent her off in the taxi, but she, instead of going to the airport, she pulled off the taxi at the same motel that he dropped the kids off later on.
Gotcha.
And that's actually the same motel in the same room that Nellie was in before she went to Hill House.
Oh, okay.
Um, so she just went. She said the house had already wormed her so deep into her mind that she didn't want to go, and that's something that's prevalent in Hill House from the in the book and in the 1999 adaptation. That, but it happens to Nell is what's different here instead of Liv, because Liv is a new character to this, I guess, adaptation.
Mm.
Um, where the house kind of starts eating at your mind to the point where this is my home. This is where I'm supposed to be. And it we see that for when she drew up the schematics, the floor plan of the house, it was just their forever home a billion times inside the Hill House, because in
Right.
her mind, Hill House is now their forever home. This is their home.
Yeah.
And that's how it was in the book, is that the house makes you think, this is where I belong. This is where I'm supposed to stay. Oh, just like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. Um, we're supposed to be here. We have to stay here. We're the caretakers of this area. And we gotta and so it had wormed its way so deep in her mind that she was saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna leave, but I'm not really gonna leave." So she just went to the motel and stayed there for a couple hours, and then at night, she went back. And, so she wasn't even gone a full she wasn't even gone a full day. She left,
Yeah.
like, late morning is when she left,
Mhm.
and then, she was at just sitting at the motel. She did a couple of fake calls to make Hugh non-suspicious, and then she went back to the house because the house is already in control of her. And there's a lot of I guess there's a lot of debate about how much is the house and possessing her and how much is her. It's still up to debate, and I'm not even happy with most of my answers half the time. But
Yeah,
um
because you gotta think about, like,
yeah.
her profession and her, what she enjoys in life is she's a designer of homes,
Yeah.
and, like, she talks about in the first half of the season about, they're trying to make enough monies to where they can create their and build their forever home, this perfect home. Like you said, like, eventually, in her mind, Hill House becomes their forever home, and it
Yeah.
actually is her forever home, but, yes, I feel like that's gotta be part of it. It's gotta be her background and her, who she
Yeah.
is also has to play into why, um,
Mhm.
why the house becomes her forever home, I would think so.
Of course, it's so sad. And um do you want to talk about when she returned home? Like what happened?
You talk about the tea party? Yeah,
Yeah.
so, Olivia has she's got Nell and Luke, and she's got this girl, Abigail, who is sleeping over, and they're having a tea party in the red room, which is actually it's her reading room, right? That's what it's
Mhm.
supposed to be? Yeah.
It's
Uh,
everything.
right, yeah, and sh instead
For
of
right now, we don't have the connection.
right.
For right now, we
So
don't know. But
so
they finally were able to get inside the red room, and Nell is very excited about that.
yeah. So instead of serving tea, she's serving rat poison, and she thinks that, like, if she kills the kids, that's her way to keep them safe from the world. And Hugh discovers this. He's able to save Nell and Luke, but he's not able to save Abigail, who dies. And this is a pretty big death going into the finale.
Yeah, because until this episode, you and a lot of and the characters are led to believe, that Abigail is an imaginary friend of Luke. We
Exactly.
didn't realize until, uh until Olivia went to go get them in the room, and there was a child there. They didn't realize that Abigail was a real person.
Mhm.
And at this point, it's not really it's you can you're led to assume that she's the Dudley's kid, but it's not outright said until the last episode.
Right.
But um it's so sad. And what's even more sad is that Abigail would sneak out of her home and befriended Luke and such because her mom kept her so secluded and so inside, and homeschooled her and everything, because Mrs. Dudley, not just because of the house, but just because of her normal beliefs, she wanted to protect Abigail from the outside world.
Right.
Very much like Olivia want and it's so sad that because of her actions and her precautions that she took to protect her daughter
Mhm.
is what led her daughter to sneaking out and ultimately her death. It's devastating. And um, we also kind of get why the rat poison has been a little bit of a focal point in the last several episodes because as we were seeing things with Hugh dealing with the black mold and such, they thought it was the scratching of William Hill's ghost behind the wall was rats, so they had rat poison, and
Right.
there were a couple of shots that were just lingering on the rat poison, and now we understand why. It's because that's what she did for it, and um, it's just it's sad to see her in this state, and also this kind of makes you, at least for me, since I've watched it so many times, it makes me want to go back and realize Nellie and Luke, they have this memory. And
Yeah, that's true.
because in Luke's episode, when we find out that um when Joey was trying to say that Luke's also a writer, he has a story about Abigail, the little girl in the woods, and Steven is like, "Oh yeah, Abigail, his imaginary friend," or whatever. Like he kind of brushes it off. Luke doesn't say anything, but he knows because he watched his friend. And as he grew up, he must have realized what had happened to
Mhm.
Abigail. Because Luke and Nell are so sad or so young that they don't understand that her coughing up and her spitting up the foam and her choking, and they didn't realize what that was. They didn't realize what was happening. They were scared.
Right.
They didn't realize that she was dying. And as they got older, they must have understood what had happened that night. And then they were aware. They know that their father came in, and they know that their father, the mom got knocked out. They know he knows that they got taken away, and then the next thing they know, their mother is dead. Like that's so scary for their last memories of their mom, and it kind of begs the question, like, did young Luke and Nell say these things to their siblings and their siblings just didn't believe it? Because their siblings never saw Abigail.
Right.
So, and they still, as adults, kept calling Abigail an imaginary friend. So it just harkens back to how they didn't never believe that their lives.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's really, really sad. And I felt terrible for the house quickly regains power over her, but when the kids were already gone and taken away, she sees when Liv is over Abigail's body and just saying no, 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 no over and over again because she realized that she just killed a child.
Yeah.
Like that is horrific for a mother or anybody to experience. Like, I just did this horrible thing. And then she sees her ghost, and that just reaffirms the house's hold on her, unfortunately. The young woman ghost who takes Abigail's hand, though, and they walk away together, that is young Hazel Hill. And if Hazel is her grandmother or great grandmother, then I because of the Dudley illegitimate child fiasco
Mhm.
theory, I think that that would be really, really interesting. But Hazel Hill is takes care of Abigail for the time being.
Yeah, that is interesting because, do you have to be an occupant of the house for your spirit to forever live there? Or do you have to
No.
have some kind of but you do have to have some kind of tie-in with the family that lives there, I guess. And I guess Abigail being the
Mhm.
neighbor or being the friend, I guess that's what that is. But I think the theory about maybe the Dudley, Mr. Dudley being a hill somewhere down the line,
Yeah.
makes sense or definitely tracks.
I think it does too.
Mm.
I think it kinda makes it it makes Hazel it makes a good oh my gosh, I can't speak. It makes sense why it would be Hazel then who does that, because Hazel, we've only seen her as an old woman before this.
Yeah.
And doesn't seem like scary or mean like the other ghosts. Like she did scare Luke when he was little, but that's because she was asking for Clara. She was asking for Mrs. Dudley. Um, because Clara Dudley is the mom, is Mrs. Dudley.
Yeah.
Um, she's calling for Clara, and that scared Luke. And we see her tell Olivia that Poppy is lying. We and she actually seemed very earnest because Liv was just like, "Can you help me?" And Hazel's like, "What can I do for you, dear?" Like Hazel's pretty nice. Like she's a nice. So I understand why she would be the one out of everyone to take care of the small child who is now part of the household. But I think it gives it more emotional meaning and depth if she is either her grandmother or great grandmother.
Mhm.
I think it's just a little bit more symbolic.
Yeah. And as you said, Abigail's death leads to the main part of this whole series where it turns out to be the final night that the family's in Hill House. Hugh takes the kids, they leave, and then Olivia ends up killing herself, jumping off the spiral staircase. She meets her end, and now we're headed to the finale, which I thought the finale was excellent, by the way. Titled
Yeah.
Silence Lay Steadily. We learned a lot about the Red Room, things that I honestly would not have put together had they not literally like explained to us. The
Mhm.
Cranes are back at the home. They confront some old ghosts, and we get to the end of the story, and we find out we get some great monologues. We get some great, we get
Oh,
Nell's kind of goodbye to her siblings, which is a very well done scene. And of course, I think Steven's monologue at the very end is very, very well done. And yeah, a
mhm.
lot of highlights in the finale. This is a really strong ending to the show, I thought, and it's a little bit longer. It's like an hour and 11 minutes. The episode, a little bit longer than the other
Yeah.
ones, and rightfully so because it really just kind of put the story. It pulls it all together because
Mhm.
it's 10 episode show, and I gotta say, even going into the finale, I still wasn't sure. Okay, how does this end? Is this going to make sense? Do they land the plane? And it does make sense, but it is a show where you kind of have to. I mean, you do have to watch every episode and have a pretty good understanding because they're weaving this web, and eventually it comes together. But
Yeah.
you have to see it all the way through to kind of get everything. And even like I mean, I've watched the finale twice now. I mean, nowhere near as many times as you've watched the show, but there are things like I get connections that I didn't get the first time,
Yeah.
and again, I think it's a very well done finale. So let's get to your thoughts on the finale, some of the highlights. What do you want to start with?
All of it.
Oh,
I really quick, I kind of want to show my little model of Hill House. I haven't painted it yet. Don't judge me, guys. For anyone watching the live, um, Hill House, if visiting from here, the red room is here, like physically not
okay,
attached to the house. It's not an actual place because um that's a wall. Like what you see from the because you see windows in that reading library. It's just windows and a flat straight wall going right up. And
huh,
it's a door to nowhere, which the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California, also has a door to nowhere on the third floor. But it opens into open air. I'm not kidding. It's literally a door to nowhere. Um, yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Is the red room is like you mentioned in the beginning of this, it's the stomach of the house, and
right,
it changes its appearance so for every person who's in it, so that it keeps you comfortable, it keeps you still, so that
right,
it can digest you faster. For Liv, it was a reading room.
yep,
beautiful reading room. You can tell she's a designer because that room is beautiful. Um, for her, it's a reading room. For Steve, it's a game room.
Yeah.
Also, and every single time that they're in the red room, it has that same window, that like rectangular vertical window,
Mhm.
and something red in the room,
Right.
um, as kind of a hint towards it. So for Liv, it was the chair. The chair is red. For Steve, it was a game room, and there's some things on the TV, on top of the TV, like toys, and the beanbag chair that he's playing on are both red. For Shirley, it was a family room, and the family photo album that she was putting the pictures in and such was red. I'm sure there's other things like in the background that I didn't notice that were red. Um, for Theo, it was a dance studio,
Mhm.
and the TV, the music video was all red. Um, the For Luke, it was the treehouse, and the door to the treehouse, and the floor is red, and there's also a few red toys around there. And uh, for Nell, it was a toy room, and
Yeah.
there's just toys and other things that are red. But yeah, it's very interesting. Hugh doesn't have a red room, but my personal thought that I like, because other people have theorized it before, because Hill House doesn't want him. It wants, and part of me is because I don't think he shines like the rest of the family does. But Hill House wanted to keep him there, but didn't want him necessarily. So to keep him there, the mold. I think the mold was what was his reason to stay there, because he had to stay there, he had to fix it, he had to work on it, and the mold was kind of his version, closest thing to a red room that Hugh gets is the mold.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I heard talk about the mold, but I did not pick up on that detail.
Also,
Um,
really quick before we move away from the mold, black mold is very, very dangerous. If you see any kind of black mold in your home, please get out, because you are at a health risk. Like, it is dangerous. But some of the symptoms is like hallucinations, paranoia, um, things like that. That's one of the, like, if people want to be a spoil sport and not believe in ghosts while watching the show, you can assume it was the mold
okay.
getting the family.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's stick with Hugh. We'll move away from the mold, but let's talk about Hugh makes the sacrifice. He basically trades himself to save the remaining members of his family, and
Yeah.
he gives himself over to the house. And we see he enters the red door. The red door closes as he hugs Olivia and Nell, who have died, and he basically tells Steven, like, now this is yours. This is your house, and this is your secret. And I thought that was a very interesting way to wrap up his storyline.
Yeah. It's so sad, especially because like before, when he's making, he's seeing his wife's ghost and she's talking to him, and like he he even like references about how these past years he's always had her with him, and she says, that wasn't me, that was all you. So we do know that, like, her actual ghost was in Hill House this entire time. The Liv that he's been talking to for the past 20 years was all him. It was all in his head. It's
Yeah,
just it was his love and longing for her that created that. So it wasn't actually Liv. And Liv is now so a part of the house, because like there's also a lot of color symbolism here. So we see in Hugh's version of Ghost Liv, she's usually wearing a blue dress. And a lot of memories she's wearing blue, but
okay.
and her nightgown, even like when she's having that conversation with Clara Dudley, when she cried so hard she made it rain rocks. that monologue, she's wearing a blue velvet nightgown, coat, um oh my gosh, what is the word?
Oh
No,
yeah,
like
I
for
think nightgowns. That's probably
yeah.
good. Yeah,
Um there's a word for it. I just can't, I am blanking. I am an idiot right now. Anyway, um it's gonna come to me at 4 in the morning. It's blue. It's blue velvet, but all of the Liv, every time we've seen her now as a ghost in Hill House, like when Luke first saw her when he got there, she's wearing a red velvet nightgown. Robe. Oh my gosh, it's a
there we
robe.
go. A row.
It's a red robe now, and
Yeah,
because the house has her. The house is part of her now, and she's part of the house, part of the ship, part of the crew. And it is it's sad that she Hill House, but because Hill House wants the kids, and and she wants the kids, she wants to keep them there. They are all in the room, and they're all dying. The house is killing them, and Hugh
right.
is just outside because he never had allowance into the red room, and he's just begging his wife and begging the house, let them go, and I'll be with you. And even that scene that you talked about where they're hugging him and welcoming him into the red room and into death, uh, Nell just looks sad but happy, like she's crying and hugging him, but Olivia is just completely blank faced, and she's just looking over his shoulder at Steven. And it's a little pardon the word, part pun again, it's haunting. It's a little like, yeah, I'm satisfied for now, but I still want you.
Yeah,
And it's a little foreboding, I think. But the monologues that are in each of this, like Steve's monologues, especially the end of it, a lot of it's from from Hill House, like "Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House." That's from the book,
hmm,
and from Steve's book.
right.
It's from both. His monologues and his explanations, so sad. Hugh's last goodbye to Steven, and how he's like, "I'm always proud to be your father. I'm always
Yeah,
proud
lucky
that."
be your dad. Yeah, yeah,
Breaks my heart. And then Nell, she's able to have some clarity and speak to her. She saves all of her siblings, and because the red room is showing them visions, things that seem heavy, because that's what the room does to kind of keep them so it can kill them. And what's kind of neat, I think, is that she usually grabs people um to wake them up. How she grabbed them is different for each sibling, but because Theo has that touch sensitivity, she's the only one that Nell didn't just like touch or initiate the thing. She actually offered her hands to Theo, and Theo took it. I thought that was a neat little tidbit.
hmm,
But Nell goes into explaining the timeline of ghosts, of death, I guess, of life, existence. How about that? Your sense of being. Nell explains that she thought before that we were like a line. We had a beginning and we had an end. But instead, the moments of our lives, all of our moments are scattered around us like rain or snow or confetti. And how Victoria Pedretti does this performance, immaculate. I People get tattoos of "the rest is just confetti." It's fantastic. Um, but she says to her siblings, like, "This was the red room, this was your room, this was this."
hmm,
Um, and they have their final goodbyes with her that most people never have. And um, Shirley's able to apologize for everything.
hmm.
And and Nell's like, I forgive you, and like you were doing what you could. And as they're all saying these things to her, she's just like, I loved you all completely and you loved me the same.
Right.
And and they're sad about her and they want to see her and they're just and but she's already gone. And so she's like, I am not gone. Um I'm sprinkled throughout your life like confetti.
Right.
And how true is that with memory? Like what I talked about in the first podcast for this show, that memories and are how we still think of people that we've lost and things that we've lost. It's
Right.
they live on in our memory, but yeah, the memory is in the past, but even small little things can remind you of said person. And that's it's kind of like a sign, like, oh, this is like me. I'm still here. I'm still with you.
Yeah.
And it harkens back to what was said during the eulogy that was spoken at her funeral. Like, I will not say she's dead. I will say she's just away.
Right.
And it's just so beautiful. Um, I I love this show. I'm sorry, man. There's no other way for me to say it. I can go on
Yeah.
for hours, but I'm just so glad that you liked it and that it kind of because you had texted me after watching it saying that you were going to rewatch the last episode at least,
Yeah.
because I feel like that's the best way to enjoy it. Um I live above some wine rooms for people who don't know, and one of the owners of the wine room, I was talking about Hill House, and her daughter watched all of it. They
Mhm.
fell in love. They're binging it, and they were already going to start a rewatch because they want to try and catch the ghosts. But they also they told she was telling me, she's like, there's so much that I want to be able to recognize now in a different light because of seeing seeing the ending now that I know the
Yeah.
whole story. And going off of how Nell was talking about the timeline of everything, her she was actually trying to warn Luke ever since the first in Luke's episode, he saw his sister at the foot of his bed and she said, "Go." And he thought that that meant go and save Joey, and that's why he left. But at the grave, she says, "Don't." It's the timelines being all weird. She was trying to tell him, "Don't go to Hill House." She was trying
Yeah.
to say, "Don't go," but time got all wandered around. And how when she first appeared to them in the Red Room, she is replying and answering things that haven't been asked yet. And then she goes into her monologues as she gets more clarity. And then we understand, oh, 5 minutes ago when she said this one thing, it was actually in reference to this.
Mm.
Like, because time is not linear and everything, I think is a beautiful way to think about it. And it's very sad.
Yeah. I think that the one thing about the finale that really shines in this, as far as this episode compared to the other ones, maybe more so than the other ones, is the like you said, the monologues, the really like Flanagan's writing really comes through in the finale to kind of wrap this up. And one of the things Steven said, he says, ghosts are guilt, ghosts are secret, ghosts are regrets and failings, but most of the time a ghost is a wish. And I think it was a good way to kind of really kind of explain his life. Like all the things that happened
Yeah,
in his life, he was able to kind of relate to these like ghost stories. Whereas, like, I mean, he did actually see ghosts, and people in his family saw ghosts and became ghosts. But I did like the applying it is like, a ghost could be a lot of things. It could be, regretting doing something that you shouldn't have, or,
yeah.
some kind of failure along the way in your life or your career. And
Well,
that
think
can kind
about
of
it.
be, yeah,
Things haunt you throughout your
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, uh, people are always no one can tell me in all like with all truthfulness that there wasn't some embarrassing thing you did as a teen or a child that doesn't make you like whenever you think about it you're like, "Oh, that was really embarrassing. That was terrible. I really regret doing that." That that's a haunting. I'm sorry, that's
Yeah.
haunting your life. That moment, that experience, that thing, it can be a moment, it can be an instant, a feeling, a person, a situation. It can be multiple things, and it can stem from a lot. And haunting doesn't just mean ghosts. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. There's definitely a deeper meaning that we get to
Yeah.
see. The Haunting of Hill House wasn't just a horror ghost story show. It definitely had those elements, but there was more to it. And
Yeah.
yeah, really good show. And even though like it's only one season, there's so much to the show. And I think there is a
Mhm.
high rewatchability because you have to because again, like you don't even really get the full meaning of it until you see the finale.
Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't even really know exactly how it was going to wrap up, but I thought they did a good job with
Mhm.
concluding the series. And I've enjoyed watching this and watching it with you and talking about it with you. And of course, you know so much more about this as anyone who watches this or listens to this will be able to tell right away that you're a super fan when it comes to the Haunting of Hill House and Mike Flanagan movies and shows. But this is a fun one, and I did enjoy it. I enjoyed um yeah, just because I'm not usually into the supernatural horror stuff. I'm just not my genre per se. But
Mhm.
this is a really good show, and and I remember when it came out. I do remember when it came out.
Yeah.
I remember people talking about it, and um, Netflix, even though they do have some good shows, I don't really like the way they do the binge drop of a show. And I think this show, like, obviously, this is a show that's endured because people, still talk about it, still watch it to this day. But
Yeah.
I do think that had I been watching the show in 2018 when it dropped, I don't think I would have enjoyed the binge model compared to just like a weekly release. Like if this show were on HBO, I think it'd be a bigger hit. And I don't think it's
Yeah.
even like
I
HBO has a certain quality level that I really enjoy, but
Mhm.
I do think that you can kind of take maybe a show that doesn't have the same production value and put it on HBO and just kind of sprinkles that HBO dust on it and present it the way they present their shows. And I think this show would have been a bigger success. Not that it wasn't a success,
Mhm.
obviously it was, but I think for me, just to be able to like understand the storyline and really honestly digest it, and that's not even like a play on what happens in the show, but I think week by week would be a better way uh
Mhm.
to watch the show as opposed to just a 1 day binge drop where you can watch it at your own speed. But there's also like certain, like you talked about the rhythm earlier, there's a certain rhythm to shows. And I feel like there's highs and lows and there's kind of a roller coaster with most shows that are well done that
Mhm.
you need to kind of feel that over a timeline. Otherwise, if you do a roller coaster ride and it's 3 seconds long, it like, I mean, like, okay, like
Mhm.
it's so fast that you're not going to remember much about it. But if you take a 10 episode show and you stretch it over 10 weeks, you get 2.5 months of a show to kind of live with and think about. To me, that's really, really kind of uh, nail this genre. And you kind of really like that's when a show becomes like a prestige show and really becomes
Mhm.
a mega hit as opposed to just a binge drop, which sometimes can work. Obviously, it worked with this show, but I'd prefer the week to week for this kind of show.
I don't like that Netflix does that. I hate even more that lately they do the half a season and half a season. That's what they did with
Yeah,
Bridgerton. They
yeah,
dropped half a season and then like a month later they dropped the other half of the season and it was only 8 episodes, so we only got 4 episodes. Like we waited 3 almost 4 years for this and you're only giving me this. Like it
yeah.
felt because a lot of people will binge it and then okay, I'm done. No more.
Right.
Bye. I
Yeah.
feel like and Netflix obviously they're still making money, so they're still gonna continue doing this.
Yeah.
But that's what they planned for the fourth season of Bridgerton. It's coming out again half and half. So obviously it works for them, which is fine, but I don't like it because like you said, I feel like it gives you time to chew and digest it. But I
Yeah.
also came out in a time where I was watching the show Supernatural since it came out in 2005, and those seasons used to be 20 to 25 episodes a season.
Right.
And yeah, the episodes might not have been 45 minutes long, but they were closer to half an hour. But we had so much room and so much story, and episodes were coming out weekly, if not bi-weekly, and it gave us time to theorize, to engage, have fun fandom. Things like I remember before finales being like, okay, guys, this is what's been happening. I want to read what other people are theorizing is going to happen, and engaging with the fan base and engaging with the media and the content,
Mhm.
rewatching what had come out because I'm so excited for this next episode. And Netflix doesn't really allow for that anymore because people just binge it and then wash their hands of it and it's done.
Yeah.
And I don't really care for that. And Flanagan does have a lot of shows. This is just one of them. He does have Haunting of Bly Manor, Fall of the House of Usher, Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
He also worked on Midnight Club. Um, but this one is definitely one of the most popular of them. And everybody has a personal ranking of different versions among those, but he is stepping away from Netflix. I haven't read enough to know what the specifics of why he's stepping away from Netflix, but they just actually finished wrapping up this week or weekend. They finished wrapping up filming for Carrie, and that's going to be on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
But um, he is
Is that a
stepping
movie
away
or a
from them.
series? Is that a series or a movie?
Series, but it's
Series.
a closed series, so just like
Yeah.
Hill House and all of his
Okay.
other things, where it's
Okay.
probably going to be like 10 episodes
Right.
usually. Um, but yeah, it's going to be. But he's moving on to Amazon because of something I guess they don't align with Netflix anymore, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I love his work, but this one is definitely top tier for me. I'm
Yeah.
very, very attached to Hill House, not just because of its book, not just because of the characters, not just because of its to me the relation connections I make to The Shining. Um, it's all of it. I have a lot of personal relation with a lot of the characters. I have a lot of sentimental value put into this. Um, there's just so much that when watching this show, it's so human,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it really allows me and allows I'm not the only one. It allows a lot of people to feel connection, to feel that human connection. And like Flanagan said in a little featurette that he did for Netflix, was that this Hill House is forcing you to confront things that people don't want to look at: death, loss, grief, depression, uh, things like that, and what it can do to a person. People don't like to accept that. People don't like to face it. They would
Yeah.
rather ignore it, sweep it under the rug instead of embrace it. And he forces you to not just acknowledge it, but embrace it in this story scary setting. So it's so human, and it's a beautiful message, and it's a beautiful story. And that's what I try to tell people when explaining the story to them. Like, yes, there's ghosts in it. Yes, it is scary. Yeah, there are jump scares, but it's a story about family and grief and loss,
Yeah.
and how families and family dynamics and how people deal with that. It's a very human family drama. And it just had ghosts. And I can say so many things about this show, and I'm honored that you took the chance to watch it and listen, and like, because I knew that something this emotional would hit. But I also knew that because, like you said, that it's not usually supernatural is not really a genre that you really dive into very often.
Yeah.
I knew Halloween was my excuse to do it. Because this isn't, yeah, there's ghosts, but it's not
Yeah.
really a spooky, scary skeletons kind of
Yeah. No, it's not.
vibe.
Yeah.
And even though it takes place around Halloween, it's still,
Right.
it doesn't feel like a typical scary movie. And that's why I was a little conflicted when you first came to me like a month and a half ago, saying wanting me to select a movie to do for Halloween time. And I was torn between a few things like Cabin in the Woods because you have not seen it, sir.
I have not.
And that is a crime. That's a crime. I'm sorry.
I will rectify that probably at some point. Yeah.
It's it's on Max. Just do it now. It's I was thinking of Cabin in the Woods just because it's a great movie and really subverts while also feeding into the tropes of the genre. But I think that this is a story and a show that has so much value. The reason I watch it once a year, I don't watch it around Halloween time. I watch it whenever I just darn feel like it.
Yeah.
And there it's such a human story that sometimes you just need it. And I feel like it's a great story. I just it to you the same way Mike Flanagan sold the whole plot to you is I was like, "Hey, we want something spooky. This has ghosts. We're gonna watch it."
Yeah.
And that's yeah. So that was me being sneaky, but yeah, there his other shows too are just as beautiful and fantastic. But he directed every episode in this,
Mhm.
and he actually said that after this, he's never doing that again. So he is the chief director on his other shows, but he is not the head director on every episode,
Every episode. Yeah.
is what I mean. Um, but fantastic. Yeah, every show that he has amazing monologues,
Mhm.
um, that people really resonate with across the board. And I say, just like with Hill House, how it's a family drama with ghosts. Haunting of Bly Manor is a love story. It's about the difference between love and possession, and there's ghosts.
Yeah.
Um, the there's just also like Fall of the House of Usher is about so many things, but also about what greed and power and envy and things like that can do to people in a family when it consumes you, and the lengths that you go to keep that power that you think you have. And it's all so incredibly so incredibly consuming. I love this man's work, and I do recommend, though, if anyone watched along with us, that people do look into Flanagan's other things that are on Netflix. But on Hulu, which you can get through Disney Plus right now, there is Doctor Sleep. And
Right.
if you haven't seen The Shining yet, watch The Shining, guys. It's on Max right now. Watch The Shining or get a refresher and then go watch the sequel, Doctor Sleep, because a lot of people don't know that there is a sequel to The Shining, and it is. It's called Doctor Sleep. And that's directed by Mike Flanagan. And when you watch that, you will see there's an overwhelming, I guess, familiarity here.
Yeah.
And with Hill House. And I think Hill House, there's so much that I can apply to literally anything and everything. And I use Hill House, or I think about Hill House so often. Yes, I am obsessed. I'm an obsessive being. If you haven't noticed or listened to my me covering being on a podcast on one of these
You're
podcasts before,
yeah.
I have an addictive personality. I'm sorry. I don't like things. I love them.
Yeah. You're
And
very passionate. Yeah. You are.
yes, thank you. And Hill House just has so much beauty, tragedy, truth. It's there's so much, and every single time I'm watching it, I'm finding something new or learning something new.
Yeah.
Like the bottle that I noticed in Shirley's episode that said they came to visit, not to stay. Was that intentional, Mr. Flanagan? I need to know. And it's just, it's the rewatchability, like you mentioned, is so striking.
Yeah.
But primarily his shows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm interested in watching more of his stuff. I'm interested in watching Doctor Sleep. So yeah,
Good.
we'll probably touch base on that again at some point. But Amber, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I always enjoy having you on the channel. But you have a YouTube channel of your own, so I want you to let people know how they can find you. You're on YouTube. You're on other places, so please plug away.
I do. So my YouTube, I have a channel that's called All of Amber's Wands. It's a study of wands and wand lore in the wizarding world. So that's Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, anything else in between. I go into the cultural, symbolic, and historical meaning of the woods that the wands are made of, and the core, where the beast, the cultural, historical meaning of the beast, and the relevance of that. Compare that to the character who owns the wand, and for those that we don't know their wand stats for, I figure it out with those methods. So it's a lot of research. It's a lot of fun. If you like wands, Harry Potter, or just listening to me info dump, it'll be on there. That's what I do on All of Amber's Wands, and I through All of Amber's Wands have that, of course, the YouTube channel, which is linked below. But I have an Instagram, I have a TikTok, and I have a Tumblr. If you guys want to chat with me about anything and everything, I do watch, like we've mentioned before, a myriad of things, and there's so much that I will not shut up about if you just ask me about it. So you can just kind of put up a wall of bullet of fandoms and just throw a dart at it and just bring it up to me, and I'll probably like it or have some relevance to it. I would love to talk with you. So if you guys want, you can message me on there, or you definitely check out my channel and subscribe and follow on there, because I am just past, I think, 250. I think so. I would like to reach 300. That would be nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can talk to me on TikTok. You can talk to me on Instagram, because those are the two I'm most active on. But
Mhm.
yeah, I would love to chat with everybody.
Yeah, please do that. Please follow Amber on social media, follow her on YouTube, follow her channel. Do that for us also. You can be sure to like and subscribe. We're also on audio platforms. Check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can go listen there. We appreciate that as well. So that about does it for this week. Again, thanks to Amber for joining, for her presenting this idea of doing this show. And it was a lot of fun. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. So for Amber, I'm Justin saying thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Have a good night. Have a happy Halloween in a couple of days. So anyway, good night, y'all. Bye-bye.